Welcome to the iHemp Hour. It's Thursday, December 1st, and we have some exciting news to share today. Looking forward to our guest. iHemp Michigan's mission is to educate, inform, and promote the research, development, and cultivation of industrial hemp. So we're here joined today. Blaine Bechtold, he's on remote location. How you doing, Blaine?
Hey, I'm doing good. No, I'm back at the home office, Dave. It just looks like a remote location. I wish my living room was like that. So yeah, I'm back at the home office finally.
Tell your secrets, man.
Yeah, we're glad to be back home, and things are moving along good. So we're happy for that for sure, and hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. I know I did, and of course I'm excited because basketball started. So yeah,
Exciting times, and let's dive into our guests here. This is exciting. I'm real excited to hear what's going on with these two guys. They got some interesting work going. It's really important. So Blaine, why don't you tell?
Okay. All right. Well, we have two great people on the show today. We have James DeDecker going to join us, and we have Phil Abetty.
Yeah.
There's James, and there's Phil.
So James, why don't you introduce yourself? You're no stranger to the iHemp Hour, but tell us who you are, what your current position is, and what you're up to.
Absolutely. Well, it's good to see you guys on the iHemp Hour. Thanks for the invite today. My name is James DeDecker. I'm the director of Michigan State University's Upper Peninsula Research and Extension Center. And we've been doing hemp research here in Michigan since 2019. And since 2020, collaborating with a great group of researchers across the region that we call the Midwestern Hemp Research Collaborative. And one of my collaborators is here with us today, Phil.
All right. So, Phil.
Blaine, Dave, thanks for having us. It's great to be here again. Phil Alberti, Research Program Manager with the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Spent the last 4 years at the University of Illinois coordinating hemp research there, and I'm now working with an exciting group at the Ellison Lab and the Wisconsin Crop Improvement Center here to really start to evaluate hemp at a larger scale, and we're really excited about the projects that we're working on, and as James said, continuing these collaborations.
Excellent.
So now you got to change all your sports gear from Fighting Illini to the Badgers, huh?
See, that's the thing, Blaine, is I'm actually from Wisconsin and a Badger, so I get to go back to my alma mater. So I was actually a sleeper agent for the last 4 years. And
and today he's wearing Sparty green, so I don't know what that's about.
Wow. I'm keeping you on your toes, everybody.
Well, I got to say, I know Wisconsin, had some close basketball games they lost here this last week, but looks like it's going to be a good season for you guys. So, yeah. All right. So let's talk about what you guys have been up to and what the good news is and what you can share about what you're finding about these varieties for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So we wanted to focus on a few things today with the time that we had. One of them is talking about the variety trials that we've been conducting collaboratively since 2020. And this year we had grain, fiber, and cannabinoid trials. I'm going to touch a little bit on what we accomplished with the grain and fiber trials, and Phil can talk about what happened on the cannabinoid side through the Cultivar Check program. And we want to make sure people know where to find the results of that work as they become available over the next few weeks here. And then also talk about a new project that we're embarking upon that people can join in the research, grain and fiber producers in particular, over the next 3 years. So as I said, we've been doing some collaborative variety testing for a number of years now. This year, we solicited grain and fiber varieties from a total of 9 suppliers. And we had 15 grain varieties, 10 fiber varieties that were distributed in trials across the 4 states. And we should mention who the other partners are. We did talk about UW and University of Illinois, but Purdue University, Marguerite Bolt there at Purdue is our other collaborator. And then in Wisconsin, we also have a nonprofit, Michael Fields Agricultural Institute, that has been working with us to do this work. So it's a nice opportunity to take genetics that we think are adapted to our region here, spread them out a little bit across geography in the Midwest and the Great Lakes, and see how they perform in some different contexts. Most of our trials are managed similarly. We try to harmonize the methods, and we spent a lot of time over the last few years doing that, looking at making our production methods more consistent, also the way that we collect the data, because being a sort of newer industry, a re-emerging industry, there aren't a lot of scientific standards. So we spend a lot of time on that. But then we also get to look at some variation, for example, in organic practices versus conventional practices. Some of us are using herbicides to control weeds, and some of us are using more organic methods. And it's been a really nice collaboration for that reason. So I can reflect a little bit on our experience here with the grain and fiber trials this year, some of the things that changed, and some of the things that we might do going forward. One of the biggest changes that we had this year with our grain and fiber trials occurred at the beginning of the season. I don't know about other hemp growers, your experience, Blaine and Dave, but when I talk to researchers on our team elsewhere, establishment of direct seeded grain and fiber hemp continues to be a challenge for folks. I was on a call, USDA call. Oh, geez, that was the week of the 15th because I was out hunting, and we heard from Kentucky, Bob Pierce, that they're seeing 50% stand establishment, and that's been about what we've achieved here in the past too. We plant twice as many seeds as we get plants, and that's been a real struggle. So this year in Michigan, we tried something new, and that was actually packing the seed bed before we planted. So we did our tillage, we came through with a roller packer, we packed the seed bed down, and then we drilled into that seed bed. And I'll say it was a really interesting outcome. On one hand, we had better establishment. We were above that 50% that we've been achieving. So we had more plants out there, which is great. However, we saw that it seemed like actually in some cases the plants struggled a bit in that heavily disturbed and compacted soil once they were established. So I think it's a really good note for growers as they're looking at different establishment methods, seedbed prep methods for hemp, thinking about how much tillage should we be doing? Should we be compacting seed beds or not? And what are the ultimate implications for that? Because just because we got more plants doesn't mean that we had higher yields. And actually what we saw, particularly in the fiber, is that after we got all those plants established, they were growing great. They did struggle a little bit, looked a little bit stunted, could have been nutrient related, could have been maybe moisture related, all the things that kind of come along with that compacted soil. So we ended up with slightly lower yields as a result too, and shorter plants as well. So in the past, we've achieved upwards of, 8,000, 9,000 pounds of dry matter in our hemp fiber system. And this year we averaged 7,200 unredded dry matter pounds per acre and 45 redded pounds of dry matter per acre out of our fiber trial here in Michigan. And our height, we went from plants that were 70 some inches tall in the past down to plants that were 56 inches tall on average. So you could really see the impact of how we prepared that seed bed and established that crop, and some of the drag that we saw in terms of height and yield as well. So it was a learning experience for us as far as that goes.
So do you think you had, the idea obviously was better seed soil contact by preparing the bed?
Well, seed soil contact, yes, but I actually think where we struggle maybe even more in hemp is in seeding depth. We're going to look more into this because it has been such a challenge for us. But when we're drilling this crop, and we also have a lot of variability in seed size in our variety trials, that's, seed size, seed quality has been a challenge for this industry as we get started here. And I think when we have large seeded crops, I think we get a little bit more leeway in things like seeding depth. But with these small seeded crop, and particularly the varieties that are extra small seeded, I think we struggle to get them placed at just the right depth, more so than seed soil contact. All that could be a secondary factor as well.
Yeah.
And we're also dealing with issues with quality, dormancy, definitely play a role into that. But I think what's really changed our approach for planting outside of just seed prep has been this idea and mindset of really looking at seed quality and then pure live seed, planting targeted populations based off of the quality of the seed that you have. So seed quality is all over the place, targeted populations. can vary according to seed or fiber production standard, like what your end use is. So we've really been playing with trying to mess with these targeted populations using pure live seed to account for seed quality to really take advantage of some of these genetics who have good agronomic potential, even if their seed quality or dormancy may be a little off.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a super important note, I think, for growers too, because we often, it's easy to talk about seeding rates in terms of pounds per acre, right? And even purchasing seed that way. But hemp is a challenge because of the variability in seed quality. So Phil is spot on about that. And so the two things that we look at to figure that out, and growers can do just the same, is obviously the germination rate, and your seed should come labeled with that. Hopefully that's an accurate read on germination. Sometimes it may not be as accurate, so you can also do a home germ test. And then the 1,000 kernel weight, meaning that we count out 1,000 seeds and we weigh that, and then we can divide that by 1,000 and get our average seed size. And with those two pieces of information, that's how we actually come up with how much seed goes into that plot, so that hopefully we have an equal number of plants establishing and a similar population across the trial.
Yeah,
And I'm assuming in your trials,
sorry, Brian, go ahead.
I'm assuming in your trials, you guys are using all certified seed. It's not different seed. I mean, it's all certified seed, right?
We have been fairly open to accepting seed from all different kinds of suppliers. And so we're definitely seeing a trend toward higher seed quality, more certified seed, or seed that at least is functioning as certified seed would in terms of the information that's coming along with it and the quality of that seed. But no, it's all over the board. We still have a couple of entries that are not to that standard yet, but they're getting winnowed out, I would say, over time.
And there's independent suppliers who are, given the infancy of this industry, we don't want to kind of pigeonhole ourselves with the genetic stock that we're evaluating. We want to look at everything and say, all right, what's good, what's bad. And what we've also experienced is by doing that, we've opened the doors for, yes, some lower seed quality and also maybe some independent breeders. But if they're willing to join the trial and be a part of it, we want to assess the germplasm that we can. And without everything's not protected right now, so it's kind of a blank slate for a lot of this material in some cases, and that's part of the fun of it. It's part of the challenge of it. You never know what you're going to get, but we kind of like the idea of casting a wide net and then seeing what we get.
Now there was a search for some feral hemp.
Yeah.
Have you had the opportunity to play with any of that?
So not necessarily for our trials here. I will say that here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, so my colleague, Dr. Shelby Ellison, and several of her students and postdocs are working on this project here. We went out and we collected feral hemp all over the Midwest. There are boxes and boxes of seed that I was just touching earlier from the very project that you're referencing that we're actually sending up to Minnesota for evaluation. But no, not yet. The goal is that we can hopefully incorporate some of that into our trials. But for right now, primarily it's been done for genetic mapping, so GWAS, and then also just field evaluations to see, all right, how are these performing against our commercial cultivars with the intent of maybe incorporating them in the future. So very early stages, but a lot of this collection right now is for the base, is building, the foundation for us to do that moving forward.
Now, this is kind of unprecedented to have a commodity crop come onto the market like this, and in this body of work that you're working on, is that something you've done with other crops in the past?
Not in the same way. I think you're totally right, Dave, that the state of this industry is very unique. It's a rare opportunity for us to be able to sort of reestablish a crop on the scene in agriculture. Certainly, every once in a while, we have emerging crops come on the scene. Back in the 80s in Michigan, it was canola, right? Everybody was going to start growing canola. And then we had malting barley come along in Michigan, and now we're doing a little bit of malting barley to support the craft beverage industry. I think the difference there, though, is that there was much more of a precedent in those other industries where the crop was being grown in other parts of the country or in other parts of North America, and we're just looking at kind of bringing that back to our region. That was the case both with canola and malting barley. Hemp due to prohibition and the lack of research opportunity and data being generated since prohibition is very unique, I would say. So the opportunity to do this sort of baseline level work, and also the potential impact that this type of work has on the industry, I think is greater than we see just about anywhere else. And I don't know, Phil, if you have anything to add to that.
No, it's tremendously rewarding work as a researcher, because every day we are learning new things, and it's a very fun thing, but also very challenging because of that. Take away the fact that we are learning how to grow this crop, which applies to every other commodity that comes into play, emerging crop. They don't have the regulation that hemp does, or the issues with regulation. I mean, we're not talking about the DEA when it comes to ground nuts or hazelnuts, or so it's just a different challenge. And so that presents it's a whole other, set of issues that makes it unique for us to be dealing with in trying to establish a new industry.
Yeah, and we're also trying to establish markets. So I feel like we need to do a lot more research yet. How deep is this? I mean, how many years is it going to take to really figure out the right genetics for the right application? And how do we get there with the regulation that we're under right now? I mean, can we get there?
It's a great question. I think there's really two ways to think about that. I think we're actually making rapid progress on understanding the adaptability of these genetics agronomically. So which varieties are likely to be successful on the farm. But the way that you phrase that, Dave, I think is actually maybe more relevant, is which genetics are suited to the intended purpose, right? And that, I think, we're only beginning to scratch the surface. So we're starting to collect some baseline data on grain quality, for example, looking at fatty acid profiles, oil content of the seed, and other things that would allow us to say, hey, this variety's got higher oil, or a certain oil profile that might be appropriate for a specific end market product or use. Fiber, I think probably we've got a long way to go on that. And the thing is, that information, some of it at least, exists elsewhere, places like Europe that have continued a hemp fiber industry. So it's not like we're totally starting from scratch, but in terms of the knowledge base in the United States, we're only beginning to think that way. And at MSU, there is a group of engineers in the chemical engineering department that are starting to be looking at hemp, getting excited about opportunities for use of hemp fiber and hurd in construction materials. And so, it's going to be the folks like that, I think, that will outline the parameters that then we'll try to find or meet based on variety selection and production practices in the field, things like, harvest date, for example.
Very, very well said, James. I mean, I think we've made a lot of progress in the last few years, and I think it's only going to kind of increase exponentially from here on out. I think, given the amount of federal funding that's going into these projects, it's becoming more and more commonplace to see money and resources devoted into the research of this. When does that really take into effect, and when are we going to see the fruits of that? I can't really say, but I think when it comes to our understanding of what we need to do to get there, it's going to happen a lot quicker over the next few years with the amount of data and the amount of groups that are kind of coming together, putting, rubber meets the road and actually looking at some of these questions. We've only just gotten to the point where I feel like we could pick a handful of varieties that are suited to each of our regions. James has his, I think I have mine, and we feel pretty confident, I think, at this point in how to grow them. But again, now it comes down to the next step is actually the processing, which has been kind of the limiting factor this entire time. But I feel like there were so many other things we needed to address as well. And we're actually starting to address those questions too.
And the other objective that we haven't touched on that people are very interested in is environmental outcomes, right? So there's sort of farm outcomes, there's maybe industry or processing needs or objectives, but are we also trying to make hemp a climate smart commodity? Are we trying to improve soil and water quality, sequester carbon in the process of growing this crop and producing these hemp-based products? That obviously has a lot of interest. That's where a lot of the funding is focused at the federal level right now, is climate change mitigation. And I think how we grow the crop, what varieties we select, will also differ dependent on those objectives. And so we have to keep that in mind as well too.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
we
know,
have a lot
looking
of
to some of
wetlands.
the environmental qualities and things like that. There's a really exciting project actually that's being the building blocks are starting right now in Lake Decatur in Illinois, where they're looking at planting hemp as one of their options for cleaning up some of the sediment and improving water quality. So talking about some of those ecosystem services, a project like that where they're looking at substantial acreage and seeing its impact. Very exciting questions that we would like to have answers to. Same goes with phytoremediation and just general cleanliness, ecosystem services of cleaning up the soil. We deal with, heavy metal contamination in urban soils and a lot of those metropolitan areas. Think about the potential for a crop like hemp to help remediate some of those soils and potentially create a useful byproduct out of those. So those are all those things that I feel like a few years ago, we kept talking about it as like what we want to see, and they are here and there starting to happen.
Yeah, well, and with the hemp lime or hempcrete being approved as a building material, I mean, that's huge, so for the fiber
Absolutely.
side. As far as the research, one thing I wanted to ask Phil, Wisconsin went to the USDA for licensing. What's it cost to grow hemp in Wisconsin?
Oh gosh, Dave, I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. I just got so familiar with Illinois' rules coming over to Wisconsin. I'm still getting caught up to speed. So I'd have to ask, or I have to get an official answer for you on that.
Yeah, that's fine. I've been curious because our department is struggling, the Department of Ag, and the fee's $1,350, I think, for the grower license. Is that correct, Blaine?
Yep, $1,350 for grower and $1,350 for processor.
And they just need more growers, because they need to cover up their expenses for the department. But it seems like a backwards way to do it. It's not many people are going to pay $1,350 to test out a crop for future, maybes. So
the good thing is that we're seeing a lot of movement in the fiber, the herd area. Again, I think grain is going to come along when we're able to use it for livestock feed, for sure. And of course, we can use it for oil and stuff now, but there's more of a limited market for that. When the grain hits, it'll be quite large. But there's just a lot of stuff happening in the building, and I feel like this year we're going to run into the chicken and the egg thing, right? We can probably do a lot more building. We can do a lot more building projects, but our supply is going to be limited this year. Yeah. I just feel that that's kind of where we're coming to, but there's 2, 3, 4 or 5 projects that are going to happen this year in Michigan alone on building with hemp building products. So, wow. It's coming. It's happening.
Is there a way to, James, through MSU, can someone grow test plots for you, or do they have to get their own license?
Yeah, actually, it's a great question. So in the past, MDARD has accommodated us licensing our research collaborators under MSU's license. I should mention that in the state of Michigan, most of my collaborators have been tribal communities and tribal colleges. And obviously, there's some differences there in terms of sovereignty and how regulation is functioning in tribal communities relative to the state. So actually, we heard from USDA through MDARD that they would like the tribal research collaborators to pursue their own licensing, either through MDARD or as sovereign nations in relationship with USDA through an approved hemp plan. My impression is, though, that on non-tribal lands that we will still have that option of licensing our research collaborators under MSU's license. So that is an advantage potentially for growers that would like to collaborate with us. And if you don't mind, this seems like a nice segue to talk about the research that we'll be initiating in the coming years.
Yeah, sounds great.
So our group of researchers, the Midwestern Hemp Research Collaborative, was able to secure support from the NIFA Supplemental and Alternative Crops Program. That RFA came out for the second time, I believe, this last summer, including hemp, whereas previously that program had been just focused on canola. So now it's an opportunity for funding for canola and hemp. And our research group and partners were able to secure funding to the tune of about $700,000 over the next 3 years to conduct grain and fiber hemp research. And we're very excited to be announcing that project because a huge component of that is going to be on-farm research. And so we're looking for grain and fiber hemp producers to collaborate by conducting simplified variety trials on their land. So we would be supplying the varieties, the seed for those growers. There's stipends available in our budget to facilitate them conducting that work and their land costs and so forth. And then we're going to be asking them to collect some basic observations in terms of flowering dates, pest incidents, yield information that then we can include alongside the more replicated and controlled university trials that we'll be conducting at all the partner states and institutions. So we're very interested in having growers that have hemp experience, particularly if they're already growing or have grown grain and fiber cultivars on their farm. And we're looking for folks that are interested in also, digging in a little bit into the collecting that data for us. It's not going to be a lot of detailed information that we want. We want to keep it as simple and streamlined as possible and really lean into kind of the experiential information that those growers can give us. But there will be some data collection and some responsibilities related to that. And also, some of those growers will be asked to serve on an advisory committee for the project too. So we'll be looking for 5 research collaborators in each of the 4 states. So 5, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, and Wisconsin each. And then 1 or 2 of those growers that collaborate on the research will be asked to serve on the advisory committee for the project and really help to drive the direction of the research. So Phil, anything you want to add on that? Anything I missed?
No, I think that was a great overview. I think the one thing I'll say is we absolutely would prefer experienced hemp growers, mostly for their own benefit, so they know the expectations and kind of have some experience. But skilled growers, there's one thing I know is if you tell a farmer he can't do something, they'll find a way to do it. So if you're skilled and you want to make it work, we would love to work with you too. So we don't discriminate in that regard. I just want to make sure you understand the expectations. It's a new crop and it provides some challenges, but certainly looking for cooperators in that regard.
Yeah, and I'll say there's a couple of objectives for the project. One is the variety testing piece, and that's the main part that will be on farm that we're looking for the growers to collaborate on. We're also going to be doing some agronomic trials, looking at things like seed bed prep that I mentioned earlier and seeding rates to try to improve stand establishment, looking at nitrogen fertility and the implications for yield and quality in the crop. And then lastly, planting date study. So we'll be planting across sort of the whole window of opportunity in the spring and looking at how plant date influences yield and quality in the crop too. So it's some exciting stuff happening. We'll also be doing a lot of pest observations, diagnostics through the plant clinic at UIUC. So excited to have them on board. And for the first time, the whole group will be running all of our cannabinoid analysis and grain quality analysis through the USDA lab in Peoria, Illinois. So, we've gone different directions for cannabinoid testing just based on who's available to partner and who's interested in collaborating. I think this will be a step toward really kind of harmonizing, standardizing our approach to the cannabinoid sampling and analysis and getting some numbers that we really can put a lot of trust in coming from those folks at USDA. It's been great getting to know them and think about what the next 3 years of partnership is going to look like with them.
Yeah, that's really exciting because we've really been pushing for this grain and fiber database to be built out. And we always intended for this data to be used, hopefully for maybe some sort of performance-based sampling. And if we can submit our samples through a USDA DEA lab and have that be fed directly into the database moving forward. That really strengthens the utility of what we have been building the last few years with the hemp database, in the hopes that we can really use this for some positive change. So really excited to have the USDA group on board. Could not be more thrilled with our research partners in the past, but it's just with all the spinning plates and the regulation that's changed, we need to go to the source, and that's working with labs that the USDA will see as equal or on par with what their expectations are.
So are you looking for, how about size wise now for these research projects? Are we looking at 5 acres, 2 acres, 10 acres variety?
So I think we can accommodate a little bit, but maybe the way to talk about it is we're going to be growing 20 plus cultivars in the university trials. We're going to ask farmers to plant a subset of 5 of those. And we're probably also going to have folks either choose grain or fiber. So you're probably looking at 5 cultivars, either grain or fiber, depending on your experience and interest. And then we're going to be asking people to put planter with strips out in their field and hopefully replicate that 3 or 4 times depending on field size. So I think, Blaine, you're probably in the ballpark of maybe we're in total talking 5-10 acres to fit all that in. But we can adjust that plot size accordingly to fit into a field that a grower has available and is planning to sow hemp into. So, and equipment size differs in things too. So we just want to make sure that it's going to be straightforward for the grower, not be a big headache, but also allow us to get some good data.
And what can they do with the byproduct of the research?
It's a great question. So certainly I think the growers would have the option of marketing the byproduct of the research if they are licensed accordingly and meeting the standards in terms of testing and THC levels. The difficulty there, obviously, is a lot of people don't currently have markets for grain and fiber hemp lined up. So we may find ourselves in a circumstance where we are simply destroying the crop at the end of the research. Financially, obviously, that's going to be costly for the growers. So we do have, again, that stipend built into the budget to cover some of those costs. From a regulatory perspective, though, actually, it could be a simpler approach for the grower to say, I'm just going to till this in, mow it down, work it in, or remove it from the field and burn it at the end of the research to avoid the requirement for the compliance sampling and analysis through their individual state program or USDA. Because when we're collecting our cannabinoid data for research, we're doing that ourselves as the researchers. We are running it through the USDA lab, but we're not having MDARD in the case of Michigan come out and do our sampling as is required for commercial growers. So if they wanted to sell the crop, they would have to go through that added step of complying with the rules that any commercial grower would.
So then the grower, and let's just take Cock, Michigan, since we're familiar with that. So then would your stipend that you're going to be able to provide a little bit of, would that be able to cover the cost of their permit? The $1,350 in Michigan, would that be able to cover that cost?
I think we're at $1,000 a grower. I have to look back at the budget. So it would not be the entire cost of the licensing.
That's a good question.
And yeah, we discussed this a little bit with the team actually yesterday. And I think we're interested in growers that are producing hemp regardless of the research. We don't want someone probably to, have this be their first time growing hemp or to only be growing hemp for the purpose of the research, just because we want folks that have a little bit of experience that are prepared to manage this crop accordingly. And, ideally they would have a market outlet and be able to sell the crop and recover some of their costs that way. But I know that's going to be a limited opportunity, certainly for growers.
Well, yes and no. And the reason I bring it up is because I can think of some iHemp members for sure. One for grain that would certainly be interested in this for sure. And I'm sure that some others would be interested in the fiber. And both of those I know could have markets for them when they plant it. They have the markets in it, especially the fiber side. no question that I think we can definitely that on the grain side, I think too, depending on the acres on it. So how do people get in touch with you? How do they go about this process and say, hey, I'm interested, I'd like to do this with you guys?
Yeah. So a couple of ways. Certainly, they can contact Phil or I directly via email. Probably the easier way would be to go through the Midwestern Hemp Database website. We're going to get some contact information, a press release type information up there soon, so that folks can identify that and find the project and find us that way. In the meantime, email probably is the best route.
Okay.
I will say, our dream scenario with this is it's a hemp grower who's already paid for the license with the intent of already growing, and we can find a way to have a value added component to their work. And the same goes for us, where hopefully we could find some genetics that they like and that they would like to grow into the future and potentially sell at the end of the season. That's kind of our goal, is that we can add on to this, and that the stipend would help to mitigate some of those costs. But yeah, in certain cases, and it varies from state and which, regulatory body, what you're paying for licensing fees. But this is really going to be value added instead of just, I'm going to try to get $1,000 and participate in this trial. As James said, we really want folks who are either dedicated to this and see hemp as a future cropping option for them and are willing to put the work in, or those who are already experienced with hemp.
Yeah, both of the people that I'm thinking about are already experienced. They've grown it, both the fiber and the grain side. So I'll be sure to reach out to them, and we'll make sure that we put it out to the iHemp members as well, and
Awesome.
So let them know it's available. So,
yeah,
are you ready to start taking information at this point then?
Yeah, we can start putting growers on the list. I know the field day that SN Atlas did this summer too, we had some growers express preliminary interest there too. So I don't think it'll be too difficult for us to find our 5 growers per state at this point. I stuck my email in the chat though, but it looks like maybe that's a private side. Let me know how I can get it out to folks.
We'll get it. We can run that maybe as a little scroll or something.
Oh, nice. So. I wonder. Maybe this is a good time to kind of transition over. We've been talking about grain and fiber and our work there, but Phil's been really busy with the cultivar check program on the cannabinoid side, and can talk a little bit more about the database maybe too.
Sure. Yeah. So, this is a nice kind of segue, this idea of grower cooperators, which is the kind of the backbone of the hemp database, as well as the cultivar check program. So for those, if you're not aware, the hemp database is a public repository of hemp variety performance for both grain, fiber, and high cannabinoid hemp cultivars. It's interactive, and the data has come over the last 3 years from university replicated trials, from grower submissions, and then what I'm going to talk about here shortly is the cultivar check program. Basically, what we do is we relied on this general large data set to evaluate which cultivars for high cannabinoid hemp are what we deemed high potential, or ones that we thought that we could evaluate further that might be some good options for growers in the region. And so we wrote a SARE grant, a Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Partnership Grant, which allowed us to send those genetics to grower cooperators across the Midwest. So just like our grain and fiber trials are going to partner these university replicated trials with grower cooperators, we're doing the same thing here in high cannabinoid hemp. Over the 2 years, we had 32 grower cooperators. We've evaluated 20 different varieties. And the data of which we're going to be sharing very, very soon here is a 2-year summary of how all of those varieties performed across the region in terms of agronomic performance, but also cannabinoid development data. So our goal with this project is to, we have growers take cannabinoid samples throughout flowering at set periods, 3, 5, and 7 weeks after flowering. And so we're able to develop harvest or compliance timelines for each of these genetics. So if an example might be a variety like Suver Haze from Oregon CBD. We've grown that, I think, in 14 different locations over the past 2 years, which is a lot. That is a lot of site years over a 2-year period. And so we're able to get a really good, kind of idea of when this variety is going to be compliant and when it's not. And so we take this data and we develop confidence intervals for when we think we can harvest them. So ultimately, a variety gets broken down into, all right, it was compliant through week 3, or it was compliant through week 5, or compliant through week 7. And what this does is it allows growers to kind of develop harvest strategies for some of these cultivars that are out there. Our goal is to continue this program in the future. We've written a grant. We're waiting to hear if we got it. That would allow us to continue this program for the next 2 years, continue to improve on which criteria we use to consider high cultivar or good potential cultivars, and then just develop more and more confidence intervals for these varieties in terms of cannabinoid performance. Ultimately, all of this is for, ideally, the use of this data for performance-based sampling, where we could hopefully eventually either eliminate some of these varieties from having to be tested at the state level for compliance or federal level, but could be harvested following specific guidelines set forth by these studies. And the same goes for grain and fiber, where we've been making a huge push to compile all of our grain and fiber data, develop performance-based sampling methods for each of those varieties. So growers can say, for example, at a 95% confidence, this genetic is compliant at this date or it's not. And that's really our goal for these projects, is to inform grower variety selections and also hopefully be used for, for informing policy at the regulatory level.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. When Phil started the database project, we focused on cannabinoid hemp because it was newer. It was more variable in our experience in terms of how these cultivars were performing, and being focused on cannabinoid production, there was apparently, or is, greater risk for going over that THC threshold. As the science and the tool has evolved, I think we've come to realize that certainly the cannabinoid information is very valuable. But if we think about the database as a tool to support performance-based testing, actually what we need is a grain and fiber database, because the risk is that much lower for THC and grain and fiber hemp. And so the opportunity for developing that list of cultivars that meet that standard of being below the threshold at a 95% confidence interval is that much more likely. So it's been great to see Phil build out the grain and fiber side of the database. And from what I've heard, the regulators are getting very excited about having a source of information, research-based information that they can use, one-stop shop to make some of those decisions and start coming up with that list of cultivars that will meet the standard and do not need to be tested. And I know there's been a push in the industry to exclude grain and fiber, and I think that certainly is a strategy, right? That the industry could take, or the regulators could take, to say that if it's grain and fiber, don't worry about it. But we have seen cases of cultivars that are intended for grain and fiber use that do go over the threshold. It may be, not every plant or every rep that we have in the field, but it does happen. And so I think that using this database approach is actually a little bit more precise.
Yeah, I haven't heard of any intended for grain crop go hot, but I did hear, and there has been evidence of this year too, of a fiber variety that did go hot, and the growers were able to mitigate it by blending it and chopping it and blending it up, and then it coming underneath the threshold. So yeah, so I haven't heard that. And of course, there's also the there's also the push for the 1%, which would take care of 95% of our problems as well too. So yeah, either one of them.
You'd still have to pay for testing though, right? Even if they raise that 1%. So having a list of genetics that you don't even need to, regardless of that. And the nice thing is, if they raise the threshold, go for it. We can still develop performance, the 95% confidence intervals based off of that raised level and see if they fit. But I see where you're going, Blaine. I want to get rid of having to test varieties that don't need to be tested.
For grain and fiber, which is never going to be used in the cannabinoid area, so to speak. There's no reason. You're right. We need just to eliminate that and get a set database that, hey, if you buy off this list or that kind of seed, that not a problem. We don't have to worry about it. That'd be nice.
Yeah,
be nice.
That's a good point about cost.
0.5. I'd take 0.5%, which would change things dramatically too. It's actually remarkable when you look at it it's such a small change, but it makes a tremendous difference in terms of cannabinoid production, specifically for high cannabinoid hemp cultivars. It would give growers so much more flexibility and freedom in terms of compliance. But that's my soapbox.
Yeah, and if MDARD or state departments of ag are visiting fewer fields, that just reduce their overall cost for administering the program, and maybe you would see our license fees come down. So I think, it's just so many arguments for moving in this direction.
Still be subject to testing, just not required.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Phil, could you just say, if folks visit the database today, what's the status of the data on both cannabinoid and grain and fiber side? Are we just through 21 right now? Or have you started to upload 22 data for the public yet?
So for the check for cannabinoid hemp, we have everything through 2022 is up there, including the agronomic data that we've collected from all of our check program trials. So that is up to date. The report that we're writing that will go out, that's analyzed the stats, that's going to be coming out very, very soon here. We just sent the first draft off for reviews. So we're really excited, but that's entirely up to date. So if you want to go through and interact with the cannabinoid database, everything's there from 2021, 22. So we have over 2,000 samples of cannabinoids in the cannabinoid database, and over 200 varieties that are evaluated, some with over 100 samples for that genetic that have been tested. You can see the number of samples that have been submitted for that variety, the number of them that went hot, the total CBD, THC, all that's there. For the grain and fiber database, it's pretty much up to date for the cannabinoid data so far, but that's, I would say, mostly update through 21. So over the next couple of months, I would expect tremendous leaps in the amount of data that's available there. And then ultimately, too, a new list of kind of, this 95%, which genetics are, in our mind, 95% compliant. So a lot of information is coming out as we end this kind of one grant cycle and begin two new ones. So this is a very exciting time, I think, to see the results of these trials this winter.
I see there's a question that came through about list of varieties that we're using in reference to some varietals from France. If folks are interested, you can certainly check the database too, or I could just read the list real quick here. It's not very long, of the fiber varieties that we had. So this year we had Fibror 79, Futura 83, Futura 75, Xanthica 70, Muca, Carmenecta, Enectarol, USO 31, Bilabreski, and Orion 33. That was our fiber list this year. I think some of those do have French origin. Most of the material that we are working with for fiber is coming out of Europe through the folks at Hemp Point, or I never know how to say this right. Canopy?
Canopy, yeah.
Canopy, okay. Which I think is...
Hannah?
Yes. Yep. Hannah Robin. Yeah.
Roman.
Yep. Yeah. They're hooking us up with most of the European material. So I hope that answers your question, Rhea. And I just want to quickly address to Denise had posed or made a comment about the Department of Ag testing. I do want to clarify, Denise is absolutely right that if a grower is growing commercially under their own license, intending to sell that product, or really even harvest that product, they do need to complete the sampling and analysis that's required by their state or USDA. So yes, as a commercial producer, that is the be all and end all. When we're doing our research, we get a little bit of leeway on that we have agreements with MDARD and a specified written research plan that is approved by MDARD in Michigan that allows us to do our own sampling and testing following their protocol, essentially. So we do our best to try to represent the MDARD protocol when we do our sampling, because as Denise says, that's what matters to growers, right? Is compliance using the methods that the regulators are using. And those methods are generally designed to capture risk, right? If there's a hot plant out there, or a hot portion of the plant, right, we're going to capture it with that sampling protocol. It's a different approach than if we were just basically trying to represent what was there entirely. So thanks for making that point, Denise.
Yeah, and for Rhea, no one wants to destroy crop.
No.
No,
Never our goal.
no, that was not the intent. That's for sure.
We live in a very strange world today.
Well, guys, I thank you for taking on this task that you guys have been doing and helping us all out, because, years from now, right, this is where this all is going to go with and all going to start with. And it really helps the growers, look at the data, decide what's best for their, whatever they're looking for, whether it be grain or fiber or cannabinoids. And it really helps out. And we just appreciate the effort you guys are putting into it for sure. So without you guys doing your work, we wouldn't be able to do ours, put it that way. So.
Well, same here. We really depend on the support from iHemp to get the word out, to serve as that touch point for the growers in Michigan and around the region. So thanks to you guys for what you do and creating the opportunities to have these conversations and reach the industry. So it's definitely a partnership, and also just comment again about our whole network across the Midwest here has been incredibly strong partnership, a great group of people. It continues to grow every day, and we couldn't do this work without all of those partners in our Midwest states here. And I think the partnership is helping to push our region forward as a real leader in the hemp industry, and creating some opportunities, I hope, for the future.
Yeah, I know Rachel's been real important with the Illinois Hemp Grower Association, and Jamie down in Indiana has been really helpful too. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yes, thank you so much. I mean, our biggest fear is that we're doing this and we're not getting the word out, or that people aren't able to use the information that we're putting together. But it's a real team effort. The growers are our heroes. They're the ones that are doing this for us, and really getting all this data. This wouldn't be possible. And I have to say, there's something about people who are working in hemp. It's been a joy to work with this group. It's been a career highlight for me to do this work, and to keep doing it is a privilege. So thank you again.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks, guys. Again, we appreciate you taking time out of your busyness and helping out and sharing all this good news.
Producer Jim, will you put their email addresses up on the screen here for a second, please? So we'll get that out there. I didn't log in the normal way, otherwise I could jump in and do this. I'm not the wizard today.
You're always the wizard, Dave.
Just an average Joe.
You're always the wizard.
So. Not Jim. But all right, well, we'll keep the things going here. So, Blaine, next on the agenda, we're going to talk about Lori's product.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that, and we're gonna talk about a number of things. So, so in 2 weeks we will have another show, and we're going to be featuring Lori Putt from HOH and Andrew, her son. They're growers in the northern part of Michigan. Lori has expanded to overseas and down in Mexico, and she's going to share all the trials and tribulations and heartaches and learning event. Again, experience is great when you learn it from somebody else's mistakes. So you're going to want to tune into her show next week or 2 weeks from now to learn about that. But she was one of the winners at the Hemp Awards that we had this last year. And 2 products she won on was Gracie's Balm, which is an equine topical that you put on, and Gracie's Calm, which is an equine elixir, apple flavors, 1,200 milligrams CBD on that. So she's going to share that, plus many other great things. And they're expanding. They're looking at going into the extracting side, and there's their website right there with HOH. So been great. They've really been pushing the envelope forward on a lot of the cannabinoid products, and we certainly appreciate what they've been doing. And then also they have some sales going on right now as well for the holiday, as well as many other CBD processors also have some sales going on for the holidays as well. So want to throw a shout out, although Mike Brennan couldn't join us. He's a little under the weather today. But
I think his throat's sore from after that U of M blowout. He probably can't talk anymore. Jeez.
Yes.
Ohio, they didn't show up, eh?
We really should stop the tape for this, but at one time I'll give the credit. Okay, Mike, go blue. You guys did a really good job with that. It's hard for me to say that, but I will say that. So,
Yeah.
but really, no, you guys did a great job, and good luck to you guys finishing out the season on the football side. We'll see you on the basketball court. Of course, I shouldn't say much because I was at the Notre Dame Michigan State game last night, and that was not the Michigan State team that we know and love. That's for sure. But anyways, Michigan Marijuana Report has a nice holiday gift guide out right now. So you might want to check that out if you're looking for any of the regular THC products, the cannabis side of that.
Or hemp frisbees.
We have hemp frisbees. All right.
They have it in the gift guide.
Awesome.
I threw a deep discount out there for everybody for the holidays.
All right. Awesome. And summer is going to come back, right, Dave? So we are going to be playing frisbees at some point in time.
Oh, yeah. Frisbees. Awesome.
All right. So they have that. A little bit of news, and then we'll wrap it up with a yummy recipe today. So it actually is coming from one of our iHemp members. So Illinois Hemp Grower Association has their membership meeting coming up December the 8th at 6 p.m. You can attend it in person, of course, but also you can also attend it virtually. You can register for that for free. The agenda is going to have Rachel's going to talk and Chris, and then they're going to give some Illinois legislative updates on that. And they're going to introduction to Tiger Fiber with co-founder James Forbes. Going to have some great raffles and questions and answers and just general updates for what's going on there. So great thing if you got time to jump in on theirs. You'll get a lot of good information from what they're doing there. Maybe even win a prize. You never know. So we'll have that. Also, want to remind everybody, NOCO is coming up. That is going to be in Colorado at the Broadmoor, which if you haven't been there, is a beautiful place. I've been there one time, and I do plan on attending this year. So that'll be good for that. And that will be in March. I'm just trying to get the date here real quickly, but I'm not having success with that right now.
It's towards the end of March, like 25th, 26th.
Yeah. So you have plenty of time to get your tickets for that. So, in Illinois, Indiana's doing some great things on there. I know Jamie and the Midwest Hemp Council is doing some great things. A lot of them, their members have also some discounts for the holiday season. If you're looking for products, CBD related products, they have some great discounts there from some of their members down there. So. And that's about the news that I got for today, Dave. Again, I want to give a shout out to what U.S. Hemp Feed Coalition has done. Their meeting that they had a few weeks ago, getting all the players together and talking about moving hemp grain into the livestock feed sectors. It's still going to take us a while to get through that, but really great meeting. They had a lot of great players. Everybody was there kind of talking about it. And so it's really great to see that collaborative effort going forward, and we'll be able to eventually get that grain into the livestock. We know how good it's going to do for the livestock. So really looking forward for that. And so I think at this time, we have a little recipe. Again, guys, Phil and James, thank you very much for attending. And this is one of the recipes you're going to want to use over the holidays. We'll get my hemper hat on there. There we go. We got my hemper hat on. So this comes from one of our members, Gary West, sent me this regarding some spicy potatoes that he makes in the air fryer. And if anybody has any great recipes out there, send them to us. We'd love to share them on the.
Jim, will you let me share my screen?
Not only on our site, but with members here. He uses hemp oil. Now, where can you find hemp oil? Oh, there's a lot of places I know. But if you go to downonthefarm.biz, I'm sure we can order some. You can get some hemp oil from there as well. And they'll bring up the pictures here. But very simple. You cut the potatoes.
There we go. Thank you. Yeah.
You got them? All right, there. Yeah, there we go. Now, one thing about hemp oil is you can't deep fry with it, right? 329 is the flash point. So you can't fry in it, but you can cook in it without a problem. Not a problem there. So you just cut the potatoes up into little pieces like that. Put them in a bowl, some oil. And their fryer, they use about a quarter cup. Sprinkle the spices, whatever spices you may like from the store you can buy or make up your own. They use a little bit of Mrs. Dash, which I love Mrs. Dash for sure. A bit of vegetable seasoning. Put a plate or cover over the bowl, shake it, turn it around, put it in the totem, and put them into the fryer. And you can go however you want to. Some people like their little fries, their potatoes a little crispier. Some like them a little softer. So whatever you like there. Gary also uses it for frying popcorn as well, he says. Now, this is not a health, what do I want to say here, statement, but he went to the doctor and his blood pressure was 118/82. So it hasn't been that low for years. Usually it's 130 to 140. He's been working on the hemp oil, potatoes, and popcorn. He says, or maybe it was the turkey that had yesterday. He wasn't sure about. Anyway. So.
Yeah, Blaine, that picture on the far right, Jim, if you could pull the pictures up again. That's in that air fryer. I did those potatoes in an air fryer. The one in the middle are the ones that your buddy did.
Yep, that's one that Gary did.
So they, air fryer works too. So you have a few different ways to use the hemp seed oil here. All right, thank you.
All right. So we want to thank everybody for joining us today. Great information. If any of you are interested in getting into the research project for this upcoming year, make sure you get a hold of Phil and James. And you're looking for 5 growers, 5 states, what I'm understanding, kind of thing.
5 growers per state. Yeah, across the 4 states. Yep.
4 states. Okay, 4 states. Well, I know that we have some iHemp members that are definitely going to be interested, and we'll be getting in contact with you soon on that so they can get on that list because they want to help out and they're experienced growers. So I'm sure they'll be interested in being part of the team, that kind of thing. So
awesome.
All right, Dave, anything you got, Dave?
No, sir. Just looking forward to it. We're going to have a small get together December 10th. You'll look for an email with some information about that. We're going to get our hands dirty, play with some hempcrete. So hemp lime.
And we're going to do that at Grow Green, right, Dave?
Yeah, Grow Green. It's near between me and Ann Arbor. It's like south of Ann Arbor, Whitmore Lake, something like that. Information will be in the email. So go to ihempmichigan.com, get on our email list, and you'll get the invite.
And it'll be a nice time to get together and kind of break bread and have a good time with everybody. So if you're not doing anything, come out and join us, and we'll be talking. And we'll be talking a lot more about things that are coming up in this January and February. We definitely are going to have some educational sessions regarding the hemp building material. Especially talking about all the projects that are going on this year. So look forward for that. We'll be having a lot of those educational meetings around that people can attend. Growers, processors, builders, architects, supply chain, all that stuff will be important. So, yep. So we'll see you all in a couple weeks.
All right.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.